Greetings to the Preparing a Thesis class here at Regent University's School of Divinity. This is your instructor, Dr. Larry Asplund, coming to you at the end of week 6 to welcome you to week 7. Now, I'm doing something different. I'm having audio control problems with Panopto. I'm going to send a message to IT and see if they can figure it out. Maybe my laptop is maybe just aging along with myself. So I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. I'm using my Screencast-O-Matic software and just publishing it on YouTube. So I hope it's okay. I hope it works out okay for you. Anyway, here we are at kind of an intermediate, kind of a transitional moment in our class in week 7. The week 7 focus will be on the literature review, specifically this whole idea of exploring the gaps, which obviously has to be defined for us in the literature. Now, this is kind of the introduction to the issue of the literature review, which will not come to any kind of a conclusion in terms of what you turn in until later, probably week 10, even week 12 of the class for grading purposes. But I wanted to introduce the subject this week. First of all, you have some great resources that will be helpful to you this week. The Master's Thesis Manual has some very specific sections, one of which I will use for definition purposes. Chapter 4 in Turabian is helpful when it comes to the lit review, and chapters 5 and 6 in the great book by Booth will also have some helpful information for you. In terms of the assignments for week 7, read, of course, relevant sections in the manual as well as in Turabian and Booth, and then begin to focus your research with a review of the literature in mind. Now, quite frankly, the review of the literature is just a report of all relevant research in some logical order. So there's going to be the task of you outlining your research notes and then using them as the basis for writing a review of the literature. But let's kind of introduce the idea this week. First of all, a definition in the manual, section 1.3, it refers to a review of the literature in terms of grasping an area of significant theological knowledge by demonstrating, demonstrating bibliographic control of the area. So the question is, what is bibliographic control? That simply means that when you have researched all the relevant resources that you could find in the literature concerning your area of research, you feel like you pretty well maxed it. You kept finding the same kinds of things over and over again. You're really not finding anything new or helpful. And when you've done so, you have attained bibliographic control in your area. That's going to be basically the concern not only for us, because we're just in a preparatory process, as you know, but it will be an area of concern for your appointed chair. And so he or she will, because they're scholars in a relevant area, they will know whether or not you've really done your homework. And of course, they can help you by suggesting some additional relevant resources, etc. So the review of the literature will articulate the development of scholarly dialogue or progress up to the contribution of your master's thesis. Now, a master's thesis is not adding to the literature. It's simply unpacking the literature. It's exploring the literature. When you write a doctoral dissertation, you end up adding to the literature, which you're not doing now. You're reporting from the literature, which is very helpful. So even if someone down the road has a similar topic and they want to see what you found, certainly accessing your thesis will be very helpful to them. In the process of your research, you're looking to discover gaps. Now, what are gaps in the literature? They're simply what you identify as inadequacies or flaws in the present state of scholarship. You have, focused down your claim to a specific research question, and then you begin to dig deeply into, okay, what's available in the literature as it pertains to addressing that question. And there will be opportunity then for you to decide, okay, you know what, I think I think that there is more work that can be done when it comes to unpacking this area for my master's thesis. So identifying a gap means simply that when you're researching the topic, we'll identify a variety of research questions, as you know, and then you decide which research question you're most drawn to. Do you feel inadequately addressed, or maybe it's just not addressed in a way that you feel is relevant, because you have a vision for what it is you would like to explore, and you are beginning to see the relevance of it. And so as you begin to dig down into the literature, and then you focus very specifically on a specific question or issue, then for you a gap is simply some space that you would like to fill, or that you would like to explore. And so, for some of you, I realize that's really a matter of application as well, since you're concerned about not only what the scholarly literature says, but you're concerned about what it means and how it can be applied to your own context. So the research question is your identified gap. I believe that there is an inspiration element as well, because you're reading, you're researching, taking notes. Prayerfully, you're asking the Holy Spirit to give you some sense of direction, to clarify your vision for your research. And hopefully you will feel drawn to something very specific, not only the question or the issue, but what it is that you need to do with it. And so let there be a prayerful process when it comes to really focusing in the end on a specific issue. Your gap then forms the basis for your specific claim, as you know, because you're taking a position as to what you're going to do with the gap. I mean, how are you going to support a specific, kind of an idea, a position as it pertains to the question, an answer that pertains to the question. That's your claim that you're making in your thesis statement. Now, how important is that? The chapters of your master's thesis, beginning with chapter 2, are all about finding a variety of ways to support that specific claim. So being clear about what it is you're now digging into, the claim clause in your thesis statement, which is kind of connected then to this idea of a gap, something that a space you want to fill, now becomes absolutely essential, because your chapters then will explore a variety of ways to provide support for the position that you are taking. So the identification of a gap will direct the final phase of your research. You should be done doing anything like general background research at that point in time. You're very, very focused on anything that specifically addresses that research question, the position that you're taking in your thesis statement. This is just kind of a rule of thumb. I know I appreciate this kind of information. I run the risk of you feeling like there is a word count requirement, which there is not. But when we look at the focus of the master's thesis prospectus, and there's good information in section 7 of the manual, then we understand that what you're doing is presenting all the relevant research in some kind of a logical order. It's not autobiographical. So you're not reporting how you researched, you're reporting what you found out. Not using first person, not using second person, you know how it goes. And it needs to be in a logical order, because quite frankly, oftentimes that structure, that outline, will then affect even how you end up designing your thesis chapters. So according to the manual of thesis, the master's thesis is about 15,000 to 20,000 words. And that's, on average about 50 to 60 pages. So that's your master's thesis. I'm just now actually working with a final doctoral dissertation that's 240 pages. So, it's significantly different. 240 pages is a bit too long, but it's going to work. It'll be okay. Your master's thesis, about 50 to 60 pages. Within that, your prospectus will be about 3,500 to 6,000 words, or about 12 to 20 pages. And the biggest part of that will be the review of the literature. So the lit review will be about 2,500 to 3,500 words, 8 to 12 pages. So if you give me a lit review that's 4 pages long, all that means is you haven't done sufficient research yet. If you give me a lit review that's 20 pages, 25 pages long, I'm probably going to say, you know what, that's suitable, that amount of research for a doctoral dissertation is more than you need. So go back and decide what the main sources are, what the main ideas are, and focus on those in your lit review. So remember, this again is not a word requirement. This is just kind of a rule of thumb. Just a quick reminder, in week 8, we will begin the peer review process, which I know you will enjoy. You're not here to edit each other's work. In fact, I provide a peer review, a template which you will use to provide relevant feedback for one another. And I think you will find as you begin to post specific areas of your written product, starting with a more of a final kind of, nothing is final in this class, but we refer to it as a final thesis statement. You will drop that in with a bit of explanation, and we'll take that process a step further. And so we will do that 6 different weeks. I will be jumping in to grade not the piece of written product that you posted, but rather your peer review. And so you definitely want to plan on being active in providing really good feedback for one another. It's going to be a follow-up Collaborate session at the beginning of week 8, June the 27th. Mark your calendar, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I will go over in more detail your thesis chair appointment process. It's going to take place after week 8, because in week 8, at the end of week 8, I will start collecting your documents that contain your preliminary thesis statement and your preliminary abstract, and I will send them on to the dean, who will then have to approve them, but will also use them as the basis for appointing your chair, which means after we've passed through that process, then we don't change anything when it comes to the thesis statement and the abstract. So I will be very involved with you in making sure, and again, I'm not that concerned about your chosen topic, just about whether or not structurally you have a workable thesis statement. If you have a workable thesis statement, you will no doubt have a very good abstract as well. So I need to discuss that, have an opportunity for Q&A as you come to this very, very important point in our class. So mark your calendars for June the 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Finding and identifying clearly that research question and deciding what position you're going to take, how you're going to propose dealing with it, and then ultimately supporting it in a variety of ways in your master's thesis is very, very important. We're going to begin that process. I want you to begin thinking about it, even though it's still several weeks before it will become specifically relevant. I think it's good for us to begin thinking about it this week in week 7. No graded assignments in week 7, but week 8 will be a big week for us. And of course, I'm looking forward to that. I'll continue to interact. If in week 5 you proposed a thesis statement and I recommended a possible change, I need to see that change from you rather than waiting until week 8 when if I don't see those changes, then we'll have to come back around essentially to week 5 again and say, okay, let's work on this a little bit more before I can send it on to the dean. And so we're very much collaborating together at this point in time, both as members of the class and with myself as well. Sure, let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you run into a problem. We're here to very much work together as a learning community in this process. So it's going to be another good week. I'm looking forward to spending that week with you. So God bless you, everybody.